Okay.
Hello.
Ms. Cicchetti, are you ready? I am. Okay, just a second. Is Mr. Schaefer coming?
Yes.
We'll wait just one more minute for Mr. Schaefer. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and begin. Mr. Cicchetti, please note that it is 12:59 and we are beginning our meeting again. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. Mr. Cicchetti, please call the item. I believe we're at K4A. Does that sound right? Great.
K4A, Chief Counsel Report, Legal Workload Quarterly Report, General Discussion on the Legal Department's workload over the last 3 months. This matter will be presented by Mr. Nanjo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cicchetti. Good afternoon, Chair Cohen. There's Vice Chair Schaefer and honorable members. My name is Henry Nanjo. I'm the Chief Counsel of the Board of Equalization, and today I'm presenting the Legal Department's quarterly report covering the second quarter of 2022. First, I want to thank my team for their dedication and hard work in the last quarter. I'm happy to report that we recently welcomed a new staff member. Tax Counsel Christian Younger joined us on June 8th, 2022, and we are now actively working on filling one vacancy in this quarter. With regards to the legal department's workload for Q2 2022, members, the legal team have had one appeal related assignment already completed, in addition to the off-season review we engage in, as I previously reported last quarter. That said, Q3 has begun, and we are starting to see appeals come in as it is the start of the 2022 state assessed appeals season. I'll provide a more thorough report addressing the state assessed appeals season in my Q3 report. Members, as you know, the legal department attorneys play two roles during the state assessed appeals season. The state assessed appeals attorney provides the the conference work for the appeals, and the other attorneys will provide representation to the state assessed properties tax division in the state assessed appeals. We will continue to implement best practices and lessons learned to continuously improve upon the procedures and protocols for future appeals seasons as we continue handling appeals during this season. Members, as you know, our litigation attorney continues to provide confidential monthly written litigation reports to the board, as well as provide appropriate public updates to our website on the BOE's public litigation roster. As you're aware, during Q2, the BOE was named in two lawsuits, both filed by Southern California Edison for the tax years 2020 and 2021. We have added these two suits to BOE's public litigation roster. Additionally, two new lawsuits have been filed at the beginning of Q3, one by T-Mobile West and the other by Sprint Telephony, respectively, on July 7th, 2022. Staff is working on getting these two new cases published to the BOE's public litigation roster. We will continue to closely monitor and handle the board's litigation cases, and will continue to keep you informed and updated as to any developments in closed session or via confidential memorandum as appropriate. Also, while somewhat related to litigation generally, we did want to make a comment about in-person service of process on the BOE. For the benefit of the public, we wanted to note that we have updated our in-person service of process policy on our website. While we had previously limited in-office hours availability under prior COVID protocols, we have returned to accepting in-person process of service during BOE business hours. However, we strongly recommend that any party seeking to serve the BOE contact the legal department to schedule an in-person appointment to ensure staff coverage is available. To avoid confusion, we have affixed additional signs outside our physical office suite doors that include contact information and delivery instructions. We are hopeful that this will alleviate confusion or misunderstanding regarding in-person service of process delivery, as well as minimizing the contact of non-legal staff for delivery and acceptance of such legal documents. In Q2, we had completed 62 Public Records Act requests or disclosure inquiries. This work is steady and ongoing, and we do note that the workload is dependent upon the volume of public inquiries. We expect work in this category to continue at about the same rate, if not a little more, during Q3 as public inquiries continue to come in. Members, as you will recall, administration assignments are typically requested by BPD or exec office covering various administrative or board meeting related legal issues. In Q2, we had 8 such assignments completed, and this includes a review of the EEO's annual training plan. Looking ahead to Q3, we are currently reviewing and refreshing an agency-wide policy to remind employees to avoid the use of personal devices for state business. We continue to provide support to BPD and the exec office as needed. In the area of agency publications, the legal department has completed 54 legal reviews in Q2. These publications include items originated from the property tax and communication departments, as well as other agency publications. Again, we expect this work to continue in Q3. I wanted to provide an update on 2 rules that staff proposed amendments for in Q2, which were presented to the board at the June 2022 board meeting. Regulation 301, definitions and general provisions, which provided definitions of terms that govern the construction of regulations regarding local equalization hearings by county boards. That proposed amendment to Rule 301 reflected recent statutory changes to Revenue Code and Taxation Code, Section 1752.2. Also, Regulation 905, assessment of electric generation facilities, which would make a regulatory provision consistent with changed California statute, as the current regulatory provision is inconsistent with and superseded by the changed statute. The proposed amendment to 905 would update the rule's references to include Revenue Tax Code 721.5. After the board adopted the proposed Section 100 amendments to each of these rules at the June 2022 board meeting, the rulemaking files were submitted to OAL on July 15, 2022. We will inform the board and our interested parties once we hear back from OAL. With respect to our other regulations in progress, Regulation 6001, General Provisions, which is the BOE's Conflict of Interest Code, staff proposed amendments that would reflect the classification and organizational changes that have taken place at the board since the Conflict of Interest Code was last amended. Members, as you'll recall, you approved the staff's amendments and authorized publication at the March 2022 board meeting. Since then, staff has submitted the notice of proposed action to OAL on May 24th, 2022, as well as to all BOE employees. The public comment period for this rule expired on July 18th. Therefore, as no comments were received, we will proceed to finalize the board-approved amendments to this rule and submit the rulemaking package to OAL. Moving on to Proposition 19 regulations, members, you will recall emergency rulemaking amendments were adopted by the board during Q2. The first is Property Tax Rule 462-520, exclusion from change in ownership, intergenerational transfers, to clarify, interpret, and make specific provisions of Section 63.2 of the Revenue Tax Code. And the second is Property Tax Rule 462.540, change in ownership, base year value transfers, to clarify, interpret, and make specific the provisions of Revenue and Tax Code, Section 69.6. As an update, members, both rules have been approved by OAL and became effective on July 18, 2022. As a reminder, both rules contain amendments that clarify the Proposition 19 rules. For example, for the intergenerational transfer exclusion, there was some question as to whether the failure to file a homeowner's exemption claim within a year, as required by Section 63.2, disqualified the transferee entirely, or whether the transferee was still eligible for prospective relief. The rules now make it clear that prospective relief is possible. Both rules remain effective until January 18th, 2022, and staff has begun the process of making the emergency amendments permanent by initiating an interested parties process eliciting comments. We anticipate bringing the rules before the board in the last quarter of 2022 to begin the official process to make the emergency rules permanent. Now that the first of the half of the year has elapsed, I also wanted to take a moment to comment on BOE's progress on our 2022 rulemaking calendar. Legal staff and the Property Tax Department have made great progress on the rulemaking calendar efforts, even with the need for emergency rulemaking efforts. There is one remaining rule on the 2022 rulemaking calendar, Property Tax Rule 192, Property Tax Audit Selection. The proposed amendments to Rule 192 would clarify, interpret, or make specific the statutory statutory changes to Revenue Tax Code, Section 469. Currently, staff anticipates making progress on this rule in late Q3 or Q4, depending on the workload. That being said, we will, of course, continue to bring proposals to the board under our rulemaking item at future board meetings as needed. In Q2 2022, the team responded to 21 email inquiries and 34 phone call inquiries. We expect this work category to continue in Q3 as inquiries come in. Finally, members, for Q2, the legal department has issued a total of 7 legal opinions or memos, which include property tax technical advice opinions, internal and board meeting related chief counsel memoranda. We expect work in this category to continue in Q3 as inquiries come in. Almost done.
No rush. This is exciting.
In closing, I again want to extend my appreciation to the team for their exemplary work efforts during Q2. Members, this concludes my report. I am available to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Gaines?
Yeah, thank you for that in-depth overview in terms of what's happening. A lot of good things happening in the legal department. That's encouraging, and it sounds like we're able to handle inquiries that I know you've got to do through, you'll get a question, right? And then legal has to respond.
Yes.
Are you able to stay on top of that, or are we backlogged in that area at all?
Thank you for that question, Member Gaines. We're still backlogged, but we are making good strides in catching up on our backlog and working through that, especially with our new staff that's joined us over the last year or even last 6 months. Some of them are newer staff members, but they're working out quite nicely and helping out the team.
That's great, and we're almost all positions full. I think we're getting close to it, but we're not quite there. Is that accurate?
Yes, we're getting there.
Yeah.
We have one that's in active recruitment, and after that, we're going to take a breath and see where we are and what we need to do to finish up.
Wonderful. Yeah, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
Yes. Any other questions? Mr. Vasquez?
Just a quick question, as you're talking about staffing, now that you've hired, I guess, this last attorney, what's our number? What are we up to these days?
I think we're up to approximately 9 attorneys and 3 support staff in legal.
Is that including the annuitant, also, I guess, the retired annuitants that we had?
That's actually not including the retired annuitants, so we
What
got a
would that
little
be?
bit extra horsepower there still.
Well, what does that come out to?
We have 2 retired annuitants
Oh,
right
just
now.
2? Okay.
Yeah, one of them's on leave right now temporarily, but we anticipate him to rejoin us shortly, so every bit helps. Thank you for the questions.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Schaefer?
Mr. Nanjo, you read legal publications that sort of survey what's going on in the United States. I'm in the election law field, and I read a monthly bulletin on election litigation, both federal and state, all over the nation. I wonder if any other states have a Bagley-Keene statute that affects, I'm sure they do, maybe it's called Laxalt or something in Nevada, and down in Texas, it probably something something relevant because they don't miss a chance to speak out on any issue. I would like you to share with the board what you might be finding that would either support your rather conservative view of it or my rather liberal view of it, that we can talk about baseball and we can talk about a lot of things when there's three of us together, but most people on the board are afraid to take a phone call because they don't know whether the three of us are chime in or two of us. I think any writing that goes on anywhere in the country on this delicate issue, I should be aware of, and you should be aware of, and I should be able to share it with my colleagues and talk to them about it when maybe we put it up as a member issue, you know. I haven't had the time to look around the nation, and you're pretty busy too, but I just want you to know that I suspect there's some national writings that you have access to, and if you find something that I might be interested in, please share it with me.
Absolutely. Glad to, sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Great, thank you very much.
Ms. Cicchetti, let's go to public comment.
We have no written comment on this matter.
Okay.
AT&T moderator, please let us know if there's anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment regarding this matter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For those of you on the phone, press 1 and 0 for comment. One moment, we do have one queuing up. Madam Chair, they left the queue and we have no additional.
Thank you. Mr. D'Angelo, quick question for you. I just want to follow up on what Mr. Gaines was saying. Over the years, you've talked about staff resources and the gaps that exist. Are you able to help us understand what are some of your long-term needs, what they might be?
Sure. From a long-term standpoint, what I'm doing with the legal department, I've been working with the executive office on, is kind of looking at what was the resources for property tax and some of the litigation and other aspects of legal work that was under BOE 1.0, and compare that to where we are now. In addition, there are things like Proposition 19, which has created a lot of other work, and various things that will come up from time to time. So suffice it to say that we think that there still might be somewhat of a gap, that we could use additional resources. One of the guides I use to judge that is our backlog and how long it's taking us to kind of catch up on our backlog. I hate to have public citizens wait too long to get information they need. So along those lines, have been in discussions with the executive office. We are getting there, but there's still a little bit more to go.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Getting there.
Thank you for the question.
Yes, but you said, well, hold on.
Sure.
I'm processing it. You said we're getting there, but we have a long way to go. Do you have a timeline associated with your goals? Do you know where you want to be by like quarter 4 of this year, where you want to be by quarter 2 of next year?
Sure. The challenge with, if I can use the term, growing the legal department is that typically requires a BCP or budget change proposal. So that's unfortunately a little longer process with finance. But I think as the executive director has both Executive Director Stowers and before her Executive Director Fleming has mentioned, and as well as our Chief Deputy Director, Ms. Renati, we're trying to maintain the metrics that we need to justify those additional positions, which we have a good start on, and we are in the process of trying to make the justification for growing the legal staff. To answer your question specifically, typically that's, you're talking, unfortunately, a multi-year process. It's usually a year to 2, just because the BCP process takes almost a full year to go through the system, if you will, and then after that require, approvals, and then you have to hire and what have you. But we have started that. We're doing the groundwork, and that's something that we're always paying attention to.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
No problem.
I had a final.
Sure.
Now that we have Peter Kim on board, and we're doing a little more PR work because we want the public to at least know we're here. Do you have occasion to go to a state bar convention or an ABA convention? And if so, might you be on a committee of public attorneys, which you'd be most welcome? And, your name is just not your name. It's Board of Equalization Chief Counsel in Lights. I think that'd be good for you and good for us, and you might even contribute an article to the Bar Journal, and so when an attorney at random hears the word BOE, I read that, the guy, their chief lawyer is always speaking out. I don't want you to be bashful at all.
No, thank you, Vice Chair Schaefer.
I want
And
to see you have the budget to do all this, too.
I actually do participate in state bar tax policy conferences and various events throughout the year, so we fly the BOE flag at those events.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. I think I had a question, I saw a question down on this end. You guys? Nope.
Just
Oh.
can I make just a
Yes,
final
Mr.
comment?
Gaines, go ahead.
Uh, Because I think, just for perspective, I think when the next version of BOE was created as a result of AB 102, wasn't the legal team, was it 2?
It was 2 attorneys and myself, and I
Okay.
actually, when BOE 2.0 first started in July of 2017, it was just 2 attorneys. You didn't even have a chief counsel at that point.
Right, and so you're at 9 now, with 2 annuitants and support staff, and we still have a little bit more room. So I think we've got the order right in terms of, let's make sure we fill all our positions, and then we could talk about justification for additional staff as a result of additional workload from probably several areas, but in particular that Prop 19 has added just additional responsibility, I think, to many aspects of our staffing at BOE.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Member Gaines, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much, Mr. Ananjo. Mr. Keddy?
We're ready for our next item, K5A, Property Tax Deputy Director's Report, Operational Updates, a report on the status of pending and upcoming projects, activities, and departmental issues, including Prop 19 implementation actions and guidance, letters to the assessors, appraisal training and certification, assessment practices surveys, and state-assessed property. These items will be presented by Mr. Young and his team. When each of them are finished with their presentation, you can introduce the next presenter on your team.
Thank you. Mr. Young?
Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Chair Cohen, honorable members of the board. My name is David Young. I'm the Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department, and I will be giving you an update on what's going on in our Property Tax Department. So I will start with a presentation on Prop 19 implementation, and as Ms. Cicchetti already mentioned, it will be followed by our chief of our respective departments, Ms. Patty Lumsden and Mr. Jack McCool. But if I may just follow up before I give my presentation on Prop 19 implementation, I would just wanted to follow up on an earlier item. When our executive director reported on the updates of the CAA's conferences, I did note that I do have the information for the upcoming annual conference from the CAA. That will be held on November 14th through the 17th. The location will be in Solano County. It will be in the city of Fairfield, and I believe they have secured the venue. It will be at the Hilton Garden Inn. So that will be coming up, just as a point of interest, or just a little heads up. I believe registration material should be coming out on that in the near future. So with that, I will start with my presentation on Prop 19 and what we've been doing to implement it. As mentioned already, our work continues with two main items. They are we are continuously reviewing our guidance that we have on our website. Our website has actually quite a lot of board-adopted guidance and annotations, LTAs, handbooks, that work continues. That takes up a lot of staff time. We actually have quite a compendium of guidance and writings on issues that Prop 19 and the intergenerational transfer and the base year transfer will affect. So work continues there. Also, work continues on answering public inquiry. Our staff is very engaged in answering calls from taxpayers, assessors, other stakeholders. It is actually quite a volume of work. So those two, as you've already mentioned, Prop 19 has actually driven a fair amount of work for Property Tax Department. And the last item that I wanted to highlight on the Prop 19 implementation, as Mr. Nanjo, our Chief Counsel, already mentioned, the Office of Administrative Law has basically adopted and made effective the 2 emergency rules that deals with Prop 19. So staff worked hand in hand with our legal department in making that happen, and now our work shifts to making those 2 rules permanent. So as you all know, the emergency rules are good for basically 180 days. After that, we either have to extend it or the permanent rules have to be in place. So we'll be working hand in hand with our legal department in making that, bringing that about. So those are the 3 main things that we've been dealing with the Property Tax Department in implementing Prop 19. With that, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Mr. Young, what was the
Yes.
date that the emergency rules were approved?
They were approved and effective July 18th,
So we have 180 days
Yes.
from that date, so,
January 18th, 2023.
okay.
The new, either we will have to extend it by then, or we should have the permanent done by then,
Okay, thank you.
of course.
Anyone down here? All right, seeing none.
Thank you. With that, I will turn it over to Ms. Lumsden. She's the chief of our County Assessed Properties Division for the next 3 reports.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Good afternoon, Chair Cohen and honorable board members. I'm Patty Lumsden. I'm Chief of the County Assessed Properties Division, and today I'll be giving you a brief report on letters to assessors. Attached to the agenda again this month is a memo on letters to assessors, which provides a list of the LTAs that have been issued since our last board meeting. In addition, it provides a link to the BOE's website where a list of all LTAs can be found that have been issued to date. As of the date of the attached memo, BOE staff have issued a total of 33 LTAs for calendar year 2022, and 9 of those LTAs have been issued since our last board meeting. And I'm going to go and summarize some of those LTAs for you. The first LTA announces the issuance of the amended Proposition 19 forms, which were amended due to the passing of Senate Bill 539 and the addition of Sections 63.2 and 69.6 to the Revenue and Taxation Code. These forms were amended at the last board meeting and adopted at the last board meeting, and they have been since listed to our assessors portal for the assessors and their staff to utilize immediately. We've also issued 2 LTAs providing notice to the public regarding the emergency amendments to property tax rules 462.520 and 462.540, which you've heard mentioned by both Mr. Nanjo and Mr. Young. And that began a 5-day comment period during which any interested person could submit written comments to both the Office of Administrative Law and to the BOE's legal department regarding the adoption of those emergency amendments. Then we also issued 3 LTAs providing the 2023-24 income levels for the tribal housing exemption, the welfare exemption, and the leased property used exclusively for low-income rental housing exemption. These income levels are published annually by the Department of Housing and Community Development and are compiled by the BOE staff for assessors to utilize when determining eligibility for these exemptions. We also issued an LTA that provides statistical data collected by BOE staff from county assessors regarding community land trust housing for the January 2020 lien date, as required under Senate Bill 196. Senate Bill 196, which became effective as of the January 1, 2020 lien date, added Section 214.18 to the Revenue and Taxation Code to allow a CLT to file a claim for the welfare exemption if certain conditions were met. In addition, uncodified language in Senate Bill 196 requires the BOE to annually collect data to quantify the amount of assessed value exempted and the number of owner-occupied dwelling units or rental units, or both, created by CLTs that were granted this exemption. We also issued an LTA on the property tax directory, giving a list of BOE staff that may be of assistance when dealing with property tax assessments. And then finally, we issued an LTA summarizing the court cases involving property tax issues that were decided in 2021 by the California's Courts of Appeal. And that will conclude my report on letters to assessors, and I'm available to answer questions you may have.
All right, letters to the assessors. Thank you very much for documenting that, detailing that for us. Anyone have any questions down on this end, on my left? None? Okay, Mr. Vasquez, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Lumpson, for your report, and I was just curious on the, I guess, the three letters to assessors, I guess number 29, 30, and 31, the LTAs, dealing with the income levels for low-income exempt housing.
Yes.
Was the new inflation percentage included or calculated into that, do you know?
So the income levels are put together by the HCD, which is the Housing Community Development. So they put the numbers together, and I believe it does depend upon what type of inflation is going on at the time. And they're based on data that is collected from HUD, which is the Housing and Urban Development Department. And we simply take those numbers and compile them for the assessors. So we're not involved in the calculating or the numbers themselves. We simply just compile them and we put them into one location for all assessors to be able to get the same information in one location.
That was kind of my concern, because we pretty much have to rely on them. And I'm just wondering if the numbers they're giving us are the latest figures. That's what I was.
Well, we go on to their website. Every year they issue the numbers, and they
make those adjustments, I guess?
Yes, and they send out a letter indicating that those are the updated numbers for the year, and then that's where we get our information from.
And then in regarding the LTA, I guess number 32, the Community Land Trust housing data,
Yes.
it appears that the data we collected was only for the January 1, 2020 lien date. Will we always, so it looks like we're behind a little bit on that?
So
Go ahead.
we're in the process of collecting for the following lien date. So each lien date, so for example, the assessors would have just closed the 2022 lien date back in July. So we're actually still collecting the 2021 information. So we started with the 2020, and now we're going to be collecting for the 2021 lien date as well.
So I guess my question, is that something we can't avoid? Because it sounds like we're kind of behind the eight ball in terms of being as up-to-date as possible on that,
Well, I think we're in the process of collecting all of that information,
to get the latest?
Yes.
Okay.
So if I may assist, we will, it's structural, it's built in. We're always doing a look back as to what happened last year. So you are correct. We won't be behind, but it's intentional. It's to give us a look backwards. To
Of
see
what's going on.
To what was already granted.
Thank you.
Ms. Lumsden, please continue. Did you have a question, Mr. Eppolite? No. Okay, yeah, let's keep
Okay,
going.
thank you. I will go on to move on to my
Okay.
next report, which is on the appraisal, training, and certification program. As I mentioned at our last board meeting, we have set our appraisal training schedule for the 22-23 fiscal year and posted the schedule to our website. We have scheduled 33 classes covering 8 different courses. This schedule of classes includes some in-person conducted classes as well as some virtually conducted classes. We also plan on scheduling 2 workshops, one on taxable possessory interests and the other on mineral properties, and both will be given virtually, and the dates for those workshops will be set soon, as we have already confirmed that we have instructors, BOE instructors for each of those workshops. And those workshops will be 2 to 3 hour long workshops, and we will be able to have several hundred people attend those workshops, where with our regular classes that I mentioned before, the 33 classes, those are usually week-long classes, and they hold about 35 to 40 students. So with our workshops, we can actually accommodate several hundred people, and we're looking forward to having those as well. So far this month, we've completed 2 classes, each of which were held virtually through Microsoft Office Teams, and they were taught by BOE staff. And those 2 classes are Course 2A, the replacement cost estimating for residential structures, and Course 3, residential appraisal procedures. And that concludes my report on training and certification, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Question, what kind of feedback did you receive from those participants in the courses that you organized?
We've been receiving quite a bit of feedback. So over the years that we first started, because this has been going on now this is our 2nd year of doing the virtual classes. So we have been getting feedback in regards to the length of time.
Is it too long, too short? What's the specifics to the feedback?
Yeah, we get information back from students regarding the information is of a difficult level. So some of them wish that it could be spread out into a longer period of time.
Okay, hold on. How long are we talking? How long are the courses that you're presenting?
Well, the courses that we provide are 4 to 5 days long courses.
Okay.
And some students
8 hours a day, 6 hours a day?
The first 2 days are typically half day. The first and last day are typically a half a day, because it's the start of the class. The last day of the class is typically when the exam is given. The other 2 to 3 days are 8-hour-long days.
And how is the exam administered online?
So the exam is normally, in normal circumstances, when we do our in-person classes, the exam is given the last morning of the class, and it's proctored there by the instructor.
So it's a written exam by paper and pencil?
It's written, yes. A written exam, and it's taken right there at the location. When COVID hit and we started teaching our classes virtually, we still offer proctoring for those exams, but the students would have to come to our office to have them proctored. And then we also worked with each of the counties to have the exams proctored at their own counties as well, so that they would not have to come to Sacramento to take the exam. So we're working with them to do that, so.
All right, so going back to the feedback that you're receiving,
Certainly.
you're saying that it's dense content that they're learning, and they want it spread out over a greater number of days?
That's one of our comments that we've received, yes. So we've also received comments where they would like to be able to have more time to review the material during their regular 8-hour period of time. Typically, these classes are intended to be some studying outside of the course of the classes, just in journals such as in the evening time, doing, drill problems and that sort of thing. So a lot of our feedback is directed towards the time, spent outside of the class. We've gotten some feedback where the students really enjoy taking our classes and learned a lot and enjoy the instructors and think they do a great job. And then we have other feedback that indicates that the classes are difficult and hard for them to follow along. So we get everything. We get one end of the spectrum to the other, and we take note of all, comments that we get, and we try to accommodate them as best that we can.
I'm curious, do you personally do any of the trainings?
I do not do the trainings, no.
You don't know? Okay.
I've attended many trainings over the years.
You're just so
but-
knowledgeable. I just knew you were one of the teachers, so, okay. So when we received this feedback, you said we are incorporating it. Are we making adjustments and into the courses?
Yes, wherever we can make the adjustments, we definitely listen to the feedback. We've adjusted how we made extra hours for students to be able to contact us before and after the classes so that they can get additional assistance. We've made adjustments to, just trying to think, just in how the classes are being taught, trying to give more helpful tips, trying to give checklists, trying to give more information at the beginning of the class, trying to have students log on sooner, trying to let them test out the logging in, because that was a lot of the problems with the virtual, is people were having problems logging into the system. So we started making more additional time for them to log in to the classes. So yes, we definitely have been listening and making adjustments where we can.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. Colleagues, any other questions for Ms. Lumsden? Please, Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, thank you. I just was reminded as Chair Cohen had brought this issue up on the classes, and then you had mentioned some of the different types of responses. And is some of that as a result of maybe people learning differently? I know that you had mentioned that it's important to have some of these classes in person because of the complexity. And so are some, I don't know if some of the classes that you're providing are done both in person and online or Zoom or whatever. So I guess I need a little clarification. Is there a remedy for some of the complaints that you're getting?
So certainly, as I mentioned, we make adjustments wherever we can. Some
Yeah.
situations we're not able to. During COVID, when we were giving all of our classes virtually, that's why we chose not to teach some of them, was because
Right.
they were too difficult to do in a virtual format. The ones that we have done, they vary, and again, every student is different in how they learn. So unfortunately, at the time, we were not able to make some adjustments because we only had that platform of teaching virtually. So we tried to make adjustments to our equipment and our tools that we were using within our abilities, and that definitely improved over from the beginning towards, where we are now today. And so we're still trying to operate by getting more tools that would help us, teach these classes better. So that's been a big help. As far as, teaching, that's why when we went back to, now that we are able to go back in person, that's why we didn't just eliminate that possibility, because we found that some of that is still needed. There are some students that just do better taking in-person classes than taking virtual, and there are some that prefer to take them virtually.
Right.
And there are some counties that prefer us to teach them virtually because it allows them to send their, have their staff attend those when they're perhaps not able to attend them in person because of the cost. So that allows them to do that. Where with other counties, they prefer for them to attend in person because they feel like they get more benefit out of that. So we definitely are making those adjustments as best that we can to accommodate. And again, we try to include additional time to let the students. That's one of the reasons why we have to keep the classes down to 35 to 40 people, even when we do them virtually, is because the amount of questions and the assistance that they still need is, is very time consuming. So we're not able to have 100 people attend the class, or they wouldn't be able to get as much out of the classes because there's just way too much needed time to still have that communication with the students. And we aren't able to do that if we have more than that.
How are the county assessors when it comes to the classes? I'm sure you're getting feedback. What sort of feedback are you getting from them?
Well, one of the things that we discuss about, because we do talk about this at the different conferences that I've attended, and we've had the discussion about because one of the comments that I brought up previously is that students want the classes spread out in a further amount of time, and to be able to study within, the regular day-to-day hours. And we've discussed this at several conferences, and at this time, the assessors agree that they want to still keep it to the 1 week long classes. They don't want to extend it past that time, but that is something we're still in discussions about, and we may end up changing that as time goes on, because we may find that even though that's the model that we've had over these years, perhaps it's a model that we now need to change. But that's still something we're in discussions about, and we may, look at that a little
Good.
bit further. So.
I'm glad you're looking at that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it all sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anyone else have any questions? Yes.
Just a quick follow-up, and you kind of answered part of my question. I didn't realize when you're doing virtually, you still have a limit of 35 plus, more or less, because I guess just the questioning, the Q&A is just too much to handle. But given that restriction, are we still meeting the demand for how many people want to take the classes? Or is there like a waiting list to get into these things?
In every one of our classes, there's a waiting list. They fill up very quickly. We definitely have more of a demand than we do have the classes for them, but like I said, we've added 10 extra classes this year alone as to what we're teaching, and that is.
And we still have a waiting list even with 10 additional classes?
Yes, yes. The classes are very much needed and very popular, and so they fill up very quickly.
Thanks.
Yeah, and just so you know too, I also, when we get comments regarding the classes, I read all of them myself so that I'm aware of what any of the issues are that, are coming up and the things that we need to do to try to improve them. Because all the feedback is good. So whether we can assist or not, because like I said, we get all kinds of comments from one end of the spectrum to the other, and we're not able to, help adjust for everyone, but we do make adjustments where we can.
Mr. Schaefer?
Am I right to assume that most of our students are our own people?
No, actually, we do have some BOE students that take the classes as well, but the majority of our students are county assessors and their staff. Because we serve the 58 counties throughout the state for providing them the training and the continuing education classes that they need.
And just as I mentioned to Chief Counsel Nanjo, now that we have Peter Kim and enhanced PR capability, if there are educational journals and educational associations that you could see that the word gets out of what we're doing, so that BOE is more of a household word, I'm a big fan of that, and I would urge you to utilize Peter Kim as much as you could.
Certainly. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Lumpson, you guys are doing a lot of work. Thank you for the detail in the presentation that you've just given to us. I hold quarterly meetings with my assessors, and they're still clamoring. They want more. It's almost like an insatiable desire. The more classes that we create, and I know we have expanded them, I think by 10, we're doing 10 more courses this year than we did last year.
Mm-hmm.
But they still
Yes.
want more, Pat. They still want more. So how do we please our, our constituents and give them what they want? More, meaning more courses.
So right now, we are teaching as many classes as we are able to teach at this time. We are teaching, like I said, 10 more than we did last year. I believe we're actually teaching more this year than we probably have taught in the 14 years that I've been working in the
Okay.
office. So
Why do you think that there's such a demand all of a sudden?
part of it is in terms of the hiring process. I think a lot of what our classes are is they're oriented towards the new appraisers as they come in. There's like a line of classes that they take as they, gain experience. And they also help them get their advanced certification as well. And we do offer continuing education classes that are like our self-studies and other webinars and stuff they can take once they have taken these classes. But these initial classes that we're talking about are the ones that they take just to gain that initial knowledge to do the work. And so as people are retiring, they're doing a lot of hiring. And as they do a lot of hiring, then they're looking to, send the students, the staff to take these classes. And so that's part of it. So the other part of it too is during COVID, the very first year, we were not able to teach any classes. And so that really put some of the classes behind for the, getting the students to get these classes that they needed. So we had some classes online that they could take, but in the meantime, there were these other classes that they hadn't been able to take because we had never taught them virtually before. So you're talking about, like I said, approximately 9 months where it's probably about a year where we were not able to teach any classes. And so there was a lot of backlog from that as well.
Okay.
So.
Thank you very much for your thoughtfulness. Let's keep going.
Okay, I'll move on to my final report.
Okay.
And that is on the assessment practices surveys. And for calendar year 2022, we have issued a total of 6 assessment practices survey reports via letters to assessors for the following counties: Santa Barbara County in District 2, Alameda County in District 2, Sierra County in District 1, Stanislaus County in District 1, Amador County in District 1, and then Inyo County in District 1, which we just published just this last week, and that's not showing up on our current letter to assessors memo. In addition to these 6 counties, we actively we're working on completing surveys and samples for 11 other counties. 5 of those are in District 1, 4 in District 2, 1 in District 3, and 1 in District 4. These surveys and samples are in various stages of production, and then once they're completed, a copy of the report is provided to each of the board members and their office for preview before it is issued and posted to our website via LTA. BOE survey staff have begun traveling again to conduct their surveys in person. However, we are continuing to collect some information remotely in an effort to be more efficient and less impactful to the assessors and their staff. As part of that process, we work closely with each assessor and their staff to determine the best way to collect this information for each of these surveys. And we will continue to monitor these results of the process improvement we put in place and make adjustments as we need to. And that will conclude my report on assessment practices surveys, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Gaines?
Yeah, if I could, just in terms of the surveys, we've talked about this in the past, but I'm hoping that we're making progress in terms of the depth of the surveys and that we're getting feedback from the county assessors. I remember when I visited my assessors, I had some say, hey, we really enjoy getting audited because it points out areas of improvement for us. And then I went and visited more of a kind of a middle-sized county, and they said, there's an issue here because you have new staff, newer audit people coming in, and they're not helping us in the areas that we want them to examine. And so, we've had some time has passed because that was my first year elected, and then we had the pandemic. So I guess if you could just respond to I assume we're doing more in-depth surveys than we were in the past, and there's different levels, I understand that. But are we getting feedback from the county assessors, and what are they telling us about the surveys? Are they helpful or just hitting issues that are non-consequential in terms of how they improve their operation?
Well, we do get feedback from the assessors, again, as I attend all the conferences and get discussions about that. We still hear that they think the surveys and samples are needful and that they're helpful and that they enjoy having that I think the right word, compliance out there to
Review,
show
yeah.
to their,
Yeah.
to show to their constituents that they're in compliance. And we do still get some feedback, and we do still have some discussions about, some of the things that we find and make recommendations about perhaps are things that think of little consequence. But there are still things that we, as, doing our job in the auditing, we still, are required to take note of that, so we do.
Okay.
So we still will have those discussions
Sure.
as well. We've made a lot of improvements to the program. We've worked with the assessors. We have an ad hoc committee that we sit on with them regarding improving the survey program, which we've been doing over the last, I believe, 2 or 3 years now, maybe even a little bit longer than that. And so we are always working on that. What our goal right now is with the survey program is, as you talked about, is trying to get the staff trained, the newer staff that we bring in that have never had county experience. We are working on getting them that needful experience, because this job is very specialized, and when you're auditing an assessor's office, it is helpful to have that experience.
Sure.
So we're trying to train our staff in a way that they will be able to have that knowledge and get that experience. And so we're trying to have more of a mentor type of situation when we go to those counties and focus on fewer topics, but in more depth, so that we can accommodate and, get our training in for our staff so that they become more knowledgeable, they become subject matter experts, especially as we start losing staff members to retirement.
Sure.
So these are all things that are very needful, and they're, take time for that to happen. So, but yes, we're definitely working on that as well.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I believe you're up next, Jack.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. McCool.
Good afternoon, Chair Cohen and honorable members. My name is Jack McCool, Chief of the State Assessed Properties Division. Today, I will provide information on the status of ongoing work in our division. With the adoption earlier today of both the private railroad car and state assessed property rolls, State Assessed Properties Division staff will now be preparing next steps. For the private railroad car assessees, notices will be sent to each assessee notifying them of their assessed value amount and information for how they may dispute the assessed values. Staff will now begin preparing the tax bills that will be sent to private railroad car taxpayers. State Assessed Properties Division staff will now also transmit the final state assessed property roll to each county, as I mentioned earlier today. Now that the private railroad car and state assessed rolls are complete for this year, State Assessed Properties Division staff will now focus our work in other areas, one of which is our property tax audits. Routine public utility property tax audits are performed by the State Assessed Properties Division under the authority of California Revenue and Taxation Code Section 828 and Government Code Section 15618, and are conducted to determine the accuracy, completeness, and reliability of the financial data furnished by the assessees and used by the board in the valuation process. Audit findings that result in a recommended change in an assessee's value will be brought before the board for your consideration in future months. The other area that will comprise most of State Assessed Properties Division's workload in the next few months will be appeals. The filing deadline to submit a petition for unitary property reassessment was July 20th. The deadline to file a petition for non-unitary property reassessment is September 20th. September 20th is also the deadline to file a petition for private railroad car reassessment. State Assessed Properties Division staff have already begun to work diligently on the unitary petitions that have been forwarded to us, and over the course of the next few months, our staff will be working in partnership with both the Board Proceedings Division as well as the Board's legal department during the appeals season. That concludes my report. I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Brief, nothing on this side? Gentlemen? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If no questions, that should conclude our presentation for the property tax department.
Okay. We have no public comment on this matter, but we'll go to the AT&T moderator.
Thank you.
AT&T moderator, please let us know if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a public statement regarding this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have one queue. And that person is going to be Kimberly Labella. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Oh, okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Staff members, board proceeding,
Yes, would you like to make public comment on the
public,
on the topic?
I would like to make a comment on the surveys and the staff has to run the board.
What's your comment on the surveys?
I have the ability to train people that with David Young. And I have a position. I was certified property appraiser. I was hired with school. But concerns about the staff they're hiring and the practices that they're missing on estate assessments because of the lack of fiduciary they're having to California.
Wow, I can't hear. I'm sorry. It's garbled.
No problem. To the public speaker, I just want to let you know I don't know if the technical difficulties are on your end or our end, but your message, your message is cutting in and out, and we can't understand you. Could you try it one more time, or maybe get in an area where you can get a stronger signal?
I'm in Ted Gaines area up in the Lake Tahoe area. Sorry.
It's okay.
I have a trier of fact of finding that I was injured on June 20th of 22 and I was a coworker, and Jack McCool and David Young are my chief. I've been trying to get a hold of Jack McCool and David Young to get back to work.
I'm sorry, you need to turn your mic on. We can't.
If I can ask the speaker to limit their comments to the matter at hand, otherwise I invite you to come back on the N item, which is public comments on matters not on the agenda.
Henry Mancho, you have full knowledge that I was sexually assaulted at the board.
Okay,
I have
this
a
is,
prior
We should cut
fact
speaker is
public
going
comment.
into a personnel
Thank
matter.
you.
AT&T moderator, please cut the line.
All right, thank you. Let's go to another caller on the line if there is one.
AT&T moderator, is there any other person on the line to make a public comment?
Ladies and gentlemen, for public comment, please press 10 at this time. And Madam Chair, we have no additional respondents.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kitty.
The next item on the agenda is K6A, Legislative Research and Statistics Division's Chief Report, Legislative Issues, Update on Administrative and Program-Related Legislative Bills Impacting the BOE. This item will be presented by Mr. Weatherby.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, Chair Cohen, Vice Chair Schaefer, honorable members of the board. This is Dustin Weatherby, Chief of the Legislative Research and Statistics Division. So since my report last June, there have been no legislative actions on any bills as the legislature has been on summer recess. However, the legislature will reconvene from summer recess for the final month of the 2021-2022 legislative session this coming Monday, August 1st. Currently, all bills that are pending that are listed on the PAN attachment are pending in their respective appropriations committees. These bills must pass the fiscal committee deadline by August 12th to still be in consideration for the legislative session. And then on the last day for the legislature to pass any bills is going to be August 31st, upon which they will adjourn for the entire 2021-2022 legislative session. So that will conclude my update on this item, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice report. Short and sweet. Mr. Vasquez.
Just one quick one. You mentioned the deadline for legislation or bills that they have, that they're working on in terms of this session. I was wondering if you had the last day that they could put forward any kind of legislative constitutional amendment.
So they could still introduce any constitutional amendment. The one rule is that a bill needs to be in print for 30 days prior to receiving any sort of committee hearing. The legislature has their own jurisdiction to waive those rules, I believe, through a 2/3 vote. So they could theoretically introduce a constitutional amendment up until before 72 hours before the final vote.
And what's that final vote?
So it would be August 31st.
August 31st.
Is the final date. So I believe the final day to amend any bills on the floor is August 25th. But since this would be a bill introduction, it would probably need to be before that.
And even if they did, that wouldn't qualify to get on this election cycle ballot.
Correct. So
It'd be a carryover.
the deadline for the 2022 November ballot was June 30th.
That's what I thought.
So any constitutional amendment that the legislature would pass would go on to most likely the 2024 ballot, unless there's a statewide election in 2023. But to my knowledge, I don't think there are any.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, on this side? Yes, Mr. Schaefer?
Mr. Weatherby, when the legislature is on vacation until like coming up in August, does that mean you're on vacation too?
Thank you, Vice Chair. No, I have not been on vacation. I was doing some ledge analyses as the legislature did amend some bills prior to going on recess, so I was busy working on those and got those out for this past week. And so I will be on vacation coming up, though.
I'd like to mention two opportunities to meddle in other things, like now that we have Peter Kim, if you see opportunity to put the BOE's name into something going on someplace else, he would be the one to effectuate that, and I would applaud such activity. And as you know, I have a rather liberal view of the Bagley-Keene situation, and it gets mentioned rarely, but I'm wondering what other states are doing, and since you are a legislative expert, if you run into some kind of catalogs or discussions, or if you're at some public event where you have a chance to speak, I'd be proud if we could make inquiry as to where this topic of the relationship of what a majority of any legislative board can speak about when they are in the same room. Can they talk about picnics? Can they talk about baseball? Or can they not talk about anything? I'm not sure whether, I know we can't speak about legislation, but I'm not sure what other stuff we can or can't speak about, and I would love to have the guidance of any other legislature or any other court. If you might bump into any of this in your travels or your studies, just be sure that you have me in mind.
Okay. Well, thank you for that question, Vice Chair Schaefer. I'll let you know if I see anything, but up until then, I would respectfully defer to the legal
Legal
counsel
counsel.
for any of that info.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gaines, any questions for Mr. Weathersby? Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and take public comment.
We have not received any written comments. Let's go to the AT&T moderator. AT&T moderator, do we have anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this item?
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, for comment, please press 10. Madam Chair, we have no respondents in queue.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is L2A, Board Member Requested Matters, Board Member Initiatives, Board Member Strategic Plan Updates, Quarterly Reports on Priorities, Actions, and Progress related to the goals of the Board Member Strategic Plan, presented by Ms. Cohn and Mr. Vasquez.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vasquez, did you want to start with opening remarks?
I will.
Thank you.
Let me just begin with, at the April 27th, 2022 board meeting, I provided a quarterly report on the priorities, actions, and progress on the board member's strategic plan. I also confirmed that I would provide you with the next update at this July meeting, and I'm hoping everybody had an opportunity to look at our little spreadsheet that was included in your packet. And I will go over some of the highlights on that. But I asked the executive director to provide this copy for you as well. From a practical and perspective, we should look at some of these and see if there's anything that maybe we may need to tweak, discuss, or any clarification you may have. Let me just kind of bring your attention to a couple of them, and then I'll turn it back over to my co-chair on this. And on the very first item, which was 1A, establish that agencies has the resources and infrastructure necessary to fulfill its workload. The executive director has asked or requested an additional 60 days on this to come back and give us a full update and report on this. So I was hoping that there's a consensus from the board to grant that. As we move on to, I guess what's still part of the 1A, but on 1A number 3, it's the anticipated completion date. We are looking at August the 30th, 22, and that's based on an assessment results that the ED will develop and a plan of action to address the resources and the infrastructure gaps that she was referring to or requested earlier. As we look at the next item, which is 1B on this spreadsheet, which is assure board members' fiscal responsibility, ethical accountability, and commitment to public service. This one Chair Cohen and the executive director will schedule this training in the third quarter coming up. So I'll let our chair maybe embellish or add a little to that if she has anything. And then on the last one I had, which was 1C, establish that the board members have the resources and infrastructure necessary to fulfill their constitutional responsibilities and associated workload. I wanted to request an extension of 1A and maybe impact with the chair and the executive director and their ability to look at this and see if it would be most likely beginning in the August or the September meeting of this year. And I want to say that might be all. Let me take a look at the last page here. Yeah, that's the only change or request I would like to add to what you have in the spreadsheet that was handed out to you. And with that, let me turn it back over to my co-chair and see if she has any other comments. And then I know we have other members, colleagues, I should say, that are also participated on this part, especially as we're looking at the whole development, educational, and outreach plan, which I'll ask Member Gaines to chime in on that one. And then the last one, which kind of gets into the whole establishing this whole imaging, and we're talking about just I forgot what we called it now, the campaign to the whole image. We had a name for it. What was it?
Branding and communication.
Our brand, I'm sorry. So I know we'll get into that in a few minutes, and we'll discuss the timetable as well on that. But let me turn it back over to my chair.
All right,
Co-chair.
thank you. Okay, so I just wanted, let me kind of set this thing at a high level, put things back into perspective on why we're discussing this and how we got to where we are. So thank you, Vasquez, for your continued leadership in this area. You may recall, when we developed the board strategic plan, we identified key steps that we needed to take to rebuild the agency and restore the national, rebuild the agency to restore its national stellar reputation. And these steps still remain current today. As I've stated on many occasions, 6 years ago, our agency was left on life support. And despite such actions, every member of the Board of Equalization team has showed up every day to make sure that we administer this complex $85 billion property tax system in a fair and effective and efficient manner. And I want to, again, publicly applaud the continued work on behalf of the residents of California. We've gone through leadership changes, we've gone through hirings, and in some cases, we've even let a few people go. So I just want to publicly restate my commitment to ensuring that our very capable team of employees and the 58 county assessors have the resources that they need to serve the residents of the state. Of course, this process will entail achieving Goal 1 and Goal 2 from our strategic plan. Now, just as a refresher, Goal 1 states that Goal 1 ensures the board's constitutional mandates are being performed in the most cost-effective, efficient, and timely manner with the 58 elected assessors and California taxpayers in the forefront. The key action item associated with this goal is to establish that the agency has the resources and infrastructure necessary to fulfill its workload. Goal 2 states very clearly that we wish to establish and meet workload priorities and provide direction for members to achieve statewide objectives and to achieve a workload in a manner that ensures maximum transparency and opportunity for open discussion. And so what does that mean? That means that the key actions associated with this goal was to identify our priorities through our property tax modernization system, modernization initiative. Both of these require that we conduct a complete assessment of our internal gaps and map out a path forward to rebuilding the organization. And we will continue down this path. I just want to note that our success will depend on our partnership as board members and our continued collaboration with our executive director. I look forward to continuing to work with each of my colleagues on the board, our executive director, the executive team, and of course, the California Assessors Association, and our stakeholders in achieving these goals. And so I thank you for that. I want to talk a little bit about goal number 4, because I believe that there is a potential action around goal 4. Senator Gaines and Vice Schaefer, I want to publicly thank you both again for embracing the partnership with USC. I appreciate the work achieved by our USC partners and the trust that the board and the agency will continue to partner with our colleagues and universities so that we can continue to achieve our agency's objectives. And quite honestly, it's my hope that we can build upon the work of our USC partners, as well as find ways in which we are able to amplify our reach to taxpayers and the broader community. In my quarterly meetings with the second district assessors, it's become apparent that taxpayers, that taxpayer advocates, and the general public need to hear more from us about changes in property tax law, as well as the changes in the current laws and regulations and the processes that we put forward in the here at the Board of Equalization. That said, I'd like to make a motion that the executive director work with my office, as well as Senator Gaines' office, as well as the vice chair's office, to explore creating an outreach communications workshop. Now, this came up earlier in our discussion with the executive director and kind of dovetailed in with what Mr. Kim's presentation was covering. And my goal in making this recommendation is to ensure that we invest the time and the resources to begin building our capacity in this area, to continue to leverage our internal partnerships to address the educational and outreach goals of the board and the agency. So, Ms. Stowers, I believe a report back from you will allow us an opportunity to amplify and explore how best to achieve this goal with consideration for agency priorities and their bandwidth. I know you have a lot on your table. So, I will make a motion. Well, here's a recommended action. Is that I move that we direct the executive director to work with my office, with Gaines and Schaefer's office, to explore creating a Board of Equalization outreach communication work group. Now, we touched a little bit upon it earlier in the meeting, but I wanted just to clarify the motion because I was caught off guard earlier in the agenda. Today, at this point, I have my words, and so I know exactly what I'm asking for. So, colleagues, this is what I'm asking for your consideration. And again, that motion is that that I work with the executive director, that I work with Senator Gaines and Senator Schaefer and their staff to explore creating an outreach and communications work group. This is just to establish another work group. So, how do you guys feel about that? Gary, I see your eyes are open, wide. Mr. Vasquez. Mr.
Just a
Epple.
point of clarification, I see our legal counsel coming up. I'm just wondering if do we need to be careful that we don't include more than 2, even though you're saying the member or the staff, I think you could run a risk of being in violation of Bagley-King. Am I correct?
Yes, thank you very much, Member Vasquez. I would recommend some caution there, because that could be viewed as a serial meeting. Really, the executive director, if she's going to work with the members' offices, should only work with 2 to
That's what I
protect
thought,
yourself.
yeah. I think it's a
Thank
good
you.
move. Just,
Okay.
you might just want to make that
For
adjustment.
that clarification, okay,
Yes.
I will take that under advisement. Mr. Eppolite, was your concern the same?
No, I was just going to ask, was this different than what we voted on earlier today?
No, the spirit is the same. I think that this is better worded. If you might remember, I kind of befuddled the motion because I was prepared to do it later on in the agenda at this point of time.
So this
It's
is
just-
in addition to what we did this morning?
I think what I'd like to do is just to clarify it. It doesn't, if anything, maybe it supersedes what we did this morning. And I don't know the exact legal way to do it. I don't know if I need to make a motion to rescind the previous motion.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm prepared to make a motion to rescind the previous motion to direct, or request the executive director to work on an outreach and communication strategy. And forgive me, Ms. Cicchetti, I don't know what item that was on the agenda. I didn't make a note in my notes.
All right. We
You
have a
have
couple
it?
of things going on right now. You do have a motion on the table that you started with, so.
Yes.
If you want, I hate to ask you to do that.
I
but
understand exactly what you're
To
talking
rescind that
about.
first, so that we don't have that outstanding, and then we could go back and
So
rescind it.
why don't we do this? What I'd like to do is take the motion to rescind first, so that the record is clean.
First, other motion doesn't have a second.
Your first motion did not have a second.
That's correct. They're just open
It's not a valid motion, so you're free to go on with the motion
to rescind.
to rescind.
Thank you very much. Okay. Hold on.
Okay, so then we're going to vote on the current motion.
No, no. The second the motion, we're gonna, I'm making a motion to rescind our previous action to request the executive director to form a work group in communications. That's my
Okay.
motion. Is there a second for that motion?
I've got a question of clarification.
Oh, yes.
Okay, because I thought we already had the committee set up.
We did.
With Member Schaefer and myself. So I think, my thought is, we can make a presentation in terms of giving you an update on what's happening with that. And I think what your desire is that we need to go farther,
Well,
right? We need to, okay, I think we've accomplished some of the things that we had talked about initially when we set up this particular committee. And I think what you're asking, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're asking is that, where do we go from here? We need to do more.
Mr. Gaines, you're right. And
so
I'm
my-
trying to I'm trying to present a pathway forward to help us get there.
So is there, my thought is that Mr. Schaefer, Member Schaefer, and myself can continue in that vein with direction from you as the chair, and we could be reporting back to you in terms of where we go from, we're at point B, but where we go from B to C.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines, for bringing that clarity, because that's exactly what I'm
Okay.
envisioning and trying to communicate.
Okay, great, wonderful.
Mr. Gaines, very quickly, I see we've got some staff at the DS. I'd like to ask them to take a moment and make a presentation to us. The floor is yours.
Okay.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Cohen. Chair Cohen and members, Matt Cox, Chief Deputy to Senator Gaines, and myself, Gary Gartner, Chief Deputy to Vice Chair Schaefer, and our staff have, with the members, have been meeting several times to work on the goals from the retreat, which the strategic plan goal number 4 was to develop an agency-wide branding campaign to ensure that California taxpayers, elected officials, business associations, nonprofits, veterans, and other constituencies are knowledgeable about the agency and the board, as well as their exclusive responsibility for property tax administration. So it's really agency-wide branding and communications. So we're here today to give you a short update on what we've done. So from the USC, University of Southern California Saul Price School of Public Policy Collaborative Project, one of their key recommendations was to implement a board member's toolkit. And so I believe that Peter Kim, our communications chief, because of that recommendation and other things he was working on prior to their report, we have our first toolkit, which is now for the 2022 Taxpayer Bill of Rights Hearing Outreach Toolkit, which includes a flyer, public service announcement, a web button for external partners, social media graphics, suggested talking points, suggested e-blast message, and a link to the hearing webpage. So I think that Mr. Kim has implemented that recommendation, and it's my understanding plans to do more toolkits moving forward on other topics to involve the public. And so, yeah, so that's that's on that regard. And then I'm going to turn over to Matt Cox, who's going to tell some of the other things that we've been working on.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'll take this opportunity first actually to thank your office, Chair Cohen, for bringing the USC opportunity to us. As Gary just mentioned, that's one concrete specific example that they provided that we thought was a good idea to adopt, but informally, it provided an opportunity for additional discussion with our offices that continued some of the work that we had done early on when we convened discussions between our offices, Peter Kim, Brenda Fleming, Betsy from my office, and I forget who else attended from your office. But in any case, it allowed us to continue those discussions, and so there are benefits, I believe, beyond adopting the formal recommendation that Gary just went over. Some of those I'll mention right now. As a result of those discussions and the discussions with USC, we have hoped to collaborate more with Peter Kim, our Chief Comms Officer, in ongoing toolkit ideas. And so those, of course, will be coming from individual member offices, but we hope that the ideas that the individual member offices share will be applicable and useful to all of the different offices. The same goes with updating the BOE website, which he has already made some great changes in my estimation. I think particularly we all have discussed the Prop 19 updates to the website. I like the fact that it's just front and center because it is something new and changing, and so it's easy for people to find. And I know we discussed earlier today also making the website more widely available to people with different linguistic needs. So we hope to continue along that path, providing input to him, also as it relates to the individual member pages as well, which, I know there's a degree of standardization among those pages, but we think that in light of what we do at the board, those are in need of constant updating, and so that's something that we hope to be working on with him as well. We've also had an initial discussion of a framework to develop an annual board outreach and education plan that reflects a consistent and shared approach. Of course, as we discussed just a second ago, Bagley Keene forbids us from discussing that beyond 2 offices at a time, but again, we all are pulling in the same direction as far as it relates to our primary task here at the board. So although the member offices may not be perfectly overlapping in their desires and needs and emphases, certainly there's enough shared ground between them that we think that that will be valuable. And lastly, and I think this goes back to Chair Cohen about what you were just mentioning, we are hopeful to develop and have had initial discussions on leveraging individual board member activities and outreach efforts that are currently being undertaken by individual board member offices. And I'll use the word ambassadors, which was a Peter Kim coinage. But I like it, ambassadors out in our districts, sharing with our key stakeholders, taxpayers in general, but policymakers, business associations, nonprofits, veterans. I know we talked earlier about people damaged, homes damaged in fires, let's say. That's another micro constituency, at least knock on wood. Let's hope that's a small constituency, right? But about leveraging individual board member efforts so that they may benefit all of the state's 40 million people and not just the 10 million people who we serve. So those are some of the discussions that we have had, as well as what Gary said, the individual concrete example from USC that is being adopted currently.
I appreciate that perspective. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Do you guys have any questions for the presenters? No? How about you on this, Mr. Gaines? Do you have any questions?
Well, just if I could
Yeah, please.
expand a little bit in terms of the hiring of Peter Kim was probably our biggest step forward in terms of getting someone that was focusing on the message for the BOE and for us as members. And so my hope would be that we would continue to work down this pathway of what can we do for individual members in terms of what they can do in their districts from an outreach standpoint. And when we talk about acting as ambassadors and identifying certain groups that need to know about the benefits that we can provide, fire victims, for instance, was a good example. But look at the challenges that we've had with Prop 19 and trying to communicate with voters. And so that's an area that I'd like us to look at in terms of expansion for getting from point B to point C, is how do we ignite the power of the BOE in each of our districts? And some of those needs will be unique per the district, but there'll be a lot of commonality too. And I think our ability to identify the benefits of the BOE and how they can help our constituents will be an ongoing challenge. But if we can get it organized in a kind of a methodical method that would be constant, where we're constantly messaging to our constituents, it would be a huge help.
So, what would you like us to do? Is there any
Well, I think
action that you want us to take?
I think at this point, just an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have, but I think probably our next step would be that we should have an opportunity for each of our offices to identify some of the issues that you'd like addressed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking specifically within the district.
Mhm.
And then what is our plan for outreach within each of our
Mhm.
districts?
Okay, I love it that we're on the same page and we're thinking about this. Thank you for bringing clarity to it. And thank you to the staff that's done a really good job.
Great, thank you.
So what I was trying to say earlier was to ask the executive director to bring a proposal that allows all of us to work together.
Right.
Very simply and succinctly stated, and a proposal
Right.
that will allow all of us to work together on creating a work group that allows our offices, as well as with the agency on every front, to outreach, to communicate, and to leverage our capacity. And in doing so, it would allow us to empower and educate our constituents, as well as educating the legislature and other elected officers and the public about the property taxes. Right now, Bagley-Keene prohibits that. And so oh, there you are, Henry. I knew you'd be somewhere.
Could I throw out a suggestion?
Yes, please.
And this could be in the form of a motion.
Okay.
And that would be to direct the committee to look at next steps
Mhm.
in terms of identifying opportunities for outreach on a per-district basis, kind of as we've touched upon lightly here
Mhm.
today, and to report back. I don't know how many days we would need, if it's the next board meeting or 2 out, but we report back to this committee,
Mhm.
and you as the chair could provide feedback and
Mhm.
oversight, and I don't think we'd have any violation of Bagley-Keene because it would be done in public.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. If we publicly notice it.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. Okay, so Mr. Gain, I think our officers have tried to, have tried to work together, and I think that we
Yes.
do a good job of doing that.
Absolutely.
So, I want to acknowledge Henry, Mr. Nanjo. Is there anything you want to say?
No, I was making myself available to help you with your motions.
Okay.
Depending on how you go.
Right, so I'm going to remove the motion to rescind, because I think it's good the way it stands. I think if I heard correctly, Mr. Gaines said a motion. And whatever, that's the second motion I had 2 motions open. Let's take them off the table, okay? And start fresh. Mr. Gaines, I believe he was saying, he was making a motion to ask the
Yes,
committee.
can I just throw it out there and you
Yes,
see what
please.
you think? But I'd like to make a motion that the Outreach Development Committee, made up of myself and Member Schaefer, would explore the ambassadorship program and other outreach opportunities on a per-district basis and bring those ideas back to this board within 60 days. I'm looking at our team here. Is that enough time to report back?
60 days, oh,
Is
long
it-
time.
Is
Okay.
that too long?
That's a long time. I'm looking at Ms. Stowers, she's the executive director. She's the one that will be working with us.
Sorry, I was multitasking.
No problem. Mr.
Yeah,
Gaines, continue, 60
Yeah,
days.
so within 60 days, we'd report back to the committee in terms of what our advice would be. And the board at that time could review it and see if we need to make changes.
And
If you want to do it sooner, we could do it sooner, and then we could just keep reporting back each month in terms of our progress.
I think that's better. I do think
Okay.
that it just will increase our efficiency.
Okay.
So I don't know about you, but I work well with a deadline.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do it at the next board meeting.
Okay, so clarification, so when we're referring to the committee, we're referring to the board strategic goal number 4, where Vice Chair Schaefer and Member Gaines are the co-chairs.
That's correct.
Okay, want to make sure I'm clear on that, so the committee staff will do a survey through me to get a better understanding of the outreach needs per district.
Thank you.
And
Right.
we will come back in 30 days and report out. Okay.
Through her.
Right.
Okay.
I'm not asking to run this program. This is, it kind of sounded like I was proposing something that the three of us would work together. These two gentlemen over here are running it through with the executive director. I'm just asking to be kept in the loop.
Right.
I don't want any surprises when it comes time to the presentation. So thank you for bringing that clarity and listening with a very keen ear. I think the only thing that I would like to just amend is to make sure that we include all of the offices.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that would require public noticing of, so that we can all talk about it, so that we're not in violation.
Okay, so just a thought, we could have Executive Director Stowers communicating with all the offices as we are progressing. So we'll give you an update before we report it in a regular BOE meeting.
Okay.
So you do get the heads up in terms of what we're going to present.
Okay,
Does that work?
that works.
Then there's no surprises.
No surprises.
If I may assist, just to
Yes.
keep the record clear as far as Bagley Keene is concerned, what the executive director will be doing is collecting wish lists, desires, information from each of the board members' offices, but will not be sharing any information between the offices. And then, based on her compilation of that information, she will work with the subcommittee to bring back a report to the next meeting.
Okay. That works for me.
Hold on, Julia has something to say.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's just a recommendation for the record.
Yeah, yeah. And the clarification that I was just handed was, this is not a formal committee of the board. It is just actions and direction to the executive director in preparation for the next meeting.
Okay.
Because we have formal definitions of, or, excuse me, the board has formal definitions of a committee, and you're not functioning as a true committee because there's other obligations that would trigger.
Ad
What-
hoc?
what are those
Would
other
that be an
obligations?
ad hoc committee?
Ms. Stowers, do you have a recommendation?
I hear this as the direction is coming from the board as a whole.
Correct.
Not from the
Some
board.
committee of a-
Not some committee, although we do have a committee for branding.
Correct.
But this is more of a direction from the board.
Yes. And this direction from the board is coming from the branding committee.
Your
The
suggestions.
report that they've made, the report that we heard from our USC partners, reading and thinking critically, I think this is just bringing us to the next step.
Right.
The clarification I wanted to make was, we're not forming yet another committee. It's still the same operation, so,
Right.
yes. I think we're all on the same page.
Okay.
Are we? Are we on the same page? Okay, I got a thumbs up from Mr. Eppolite. Sounds good. Okay, so there's an open motion. Ms. Cicchetti, do you have the motion? Is it written down? Can you give it to me?
I cannot, no, I do not have it.
Not a problem. We will,
You want me to
I have
take a
quite a
stab at
few.
it
we
again?
will restate it.
Like, read here, down to here, over there.
A motion that the Outreach Development Committee would explore the ambassador program and outreach for each district and bring ideas back to the board within 30 days to report back to the board group.
Actually, the correction was, I think, at the end, it was to the next board meeting.
Just a point of clarification, the committee is the Branding and Communications Committee,
Yes, you're right.
Yes,
Okay.
that is
Thank you.
correct.
The committee is the Branding and the Communications Committee.
which deals with outreach and all the other things, yeah.
let me say this. What I heard read, the motion that I heard read sounds different than what I heard Mr. Gaines say.
Pretty close. I mean, I'm okay with it. What would you like? What are your thoughts? What are we missing?
I'm going to go with the motion that was read, and in 30 days, we'll clean it up if it needs to be cleaned up.
Okay,
Okay?
great.
And just technically, can we do next board meeting? Because I don't think the next board meeting is within 30 days.
Well, that's what I, thank you.
Perfect.
There
Next
you
board
go.
meeting.
Next board
Thank
meeting.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'll second it if you need a second.
Thank you. Mr. Keddy, a motion has been made by Mr. Gaines. You've read the motion. It's been seconded by Mr. Vasquez.
Chair Cohen?
Aye.
Vice
Oh, wait,
Chair-
I'm sorry, Mr. Keddy, let's take public comment on this,
Yes, we will.
and then we'll take that vote.
AT&T moderator, do we have anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To make public comment, please press 1-0. And we do have one coming in queue. Be a moment. Go back to the line of Kimberly LaBella. Please go ahead.
Yes.
Someone there? Please say someone there. Hello?
Honorable board members, thank you.
Yes, hi, we're taking a
Allow
public
me to
comment
call.
on a policy matter.
I've been listening all day. Yes, I'm listening all day. I wanted to thank you for the honorable board members that it looks like that it appears that they're trying to clean up what's been going on in the assessment practices of California. Ted Gaines and Chair Cohen, you're doing a wonderful job chairing. Let you guys, Mr. Vasquez, all you guys, I just want to say thank you for starting this committee on the outreach committee, because I certainly hope that a lot of Californians start getting more involved in what's going on within the board as far as assessment practices and all the surveys that I've been trying to comment on the agenda all day, but I've been continuously being hung up on. And I just want to prove that the Board of Equalization, the Property and Special Taxes, and all the members, there's been a reason for the breakdown of the CTDFA into two parts. It's because of the negligence that I was involved in since 2005 when I was hired on the same day as Jack McCool on January 18th of 2005. Now, I've been certified. I'm executive member for the GIS Council right now, and I wanted to just say, I hope you guys keep paying attention to what's going on, and I think that the employees should be held accountable. Just because I'm honest enough and I'm brave enough to come forward with the comment. And I'm going to look forward to this outreach program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there another public comment?
Madam Chair, we have no other respondents in queue.
All right, thank you. Let's call the roll.
Chair Cohen?
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer?
Aye.
Member Gaines?
Aye.
Member Vasquez?
Aye.
Deputy Controller Eppolite?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Madam
Thank you.
Chair, I wanted to just, point of clarification. At this time, if possible, it would be helpful, I think, to Vice Chair Schaefer speaking on his behalf, and Senator Gaines and ourselves, if you or other members or your staff have even one or two ideas that you'd like us to think about incorporating while we work on it, since you're meeting as a board and can share that with us, that could be really helpful to us.
I think you're right. It should be a team effort, absolutely. And my team will contribute ideas.
But I mean, if you have anything now in public session.
I'm not prepared. I don't have
Okay.
anything now for you.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't know if I don't want to speak for anyone else, but
But
I
that
don't
could be
have it.
handled through the executive director.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Wonderful.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Keddy,
much.
please call the next item.
The next
Chair
item.
Cohen, I just wanted to double check. Did you want to do anything with your prior motion, or? are we
No,
gonna do-
you might have missed it. Yes.
No, I'm talking about the original motion to form the communication committee back
work
before
group.
the lunch break, the work group, yeah. Because only reason I bring it up is because it sounds like this committee is going to be doing work before that, so you may not be ready for the work group at the next board meeting.
I agree. What I was going to do was have a better worded motion prepared for the next board meeting,
Okay,
to
that
take up
works.
the work group meeting.
Okay,
So I'm going to work on that.
not a problem.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
The next item is M1, Public Policy Hearing, Proposition 19 Implementation. There are no planned staff reports or external speakers for this agenda item for this month's meeting. However, persons who wish to address the board on this topic as a public comment may do so.
All right.
AT&T operator, do we have anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To make comment by phone, press 10, please. Madam Chair, we have no respondents in queue.
Hearing no comments from anyone, we'll close this public policy hearing. The next item on the agenda is M2A, Public Policy Hearing, Impact of Public Calamities on Property Tax Administration, County Boards of Equalization, Assessment Appeals Board, AAB, Remote Hearings. There are no staff reports or external speakers for this agenda item for this month's meeting. However, persons who wish to address the board on this topic as a public comment may do so. We have not received a request for any in-person speaker. AT&T moderator, is there anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this item?
For comments on the current item, please press 10 at this time. And once again, Madam Chair, we have no respondents in queue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no further comments from anyone, we'll close this public policy hearing. The next item on the agenda is N, public comments on matters not on the agenda. Persons who wish to address the Board of Equalization regarding items not on the agenda, please note that the board cannot take action on these items not on the agenda. However, the board can schedule issues raised by the public for consideration in future meetings. We have no written comments on this, but I'll go to the AT&T moderator for a public comments. AT&T moderator, please let us know if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this item.
Once again, to make comment on this item, please press 10 at this time. Madam Chair, we have no respondents.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. I just want to give an opportunity for my colleagues to give some closing remarks before we dismiss and recess for tomorrow. Mr. Gaines?
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to give an update on the Oak Fire, the Yosemite area, Mariposa County. And in the last 24 hours, the amount of acreage burned has gone from 14,000 to 18,000 acres. More than 40 structures have been destroyed and thousands of people evacuated. And just want to thank our firefighters. They're doing everything they can to control the blaze and hope that we can see it under control quickly as possible. And so our thoughts and prayers are with all of those who are impacted, and hopefully we can get a handle on this quickly. It's about 26% contained currently. And then just a final reminder for our constituents that there are opportunities for property tax relief, relief from Proposition 13 as a result of the loss of a structure. And so if any of our constituents have questions as it relates to fire damage, please give my office a call or anybody else impacted. So thank you.
All right, no problem. Thank you. Colleagues, anyone else have any closing remarks?
I have question.
Okay.
Does any of staff have the exhibits in our agenda for today, K6A, called Legislative Issues? On page 2, they make reference to two different legislators, both named Hertzberg, one with a T in it, like the automobile company, and one without a T. Do we have two?
I don't know, but I think we could recess and staff could get you that answer.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Anyone on my right? Closing remarks?
Just, I wasn't sure if you said at the opening we were going to adjourn this meeting in honor of Mr. Dutton, or are we
Yes.
going to wait until?
Nope.
Okay.
We can do, this is a recess, but we can adjourn today because we spoke about it today, if you'd like. Would you like to do that?
I think we should.
Yes.
Yes.
I
We're
would-
going to recess in his name and in his memory. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay.
I would like to adjourn this,
Recess.
or adjourn this recess, is that what it is? Or this recess of
Or
this
just
meeting?
recess.
I'd like
yeah.
to
In
recess.
closing of this recess meeting, how's that? In honor of Mr. Dutton, one of our assessors and former legislator here in Sacramento, for his time and dedication, and once again, condolences to the Dutton family.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for those comments.
All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in recess. We will be meeting again tomorrow, Wednesday, July 27th. It is 2:49 PM. We are in recess until tomorrow. Thank you.
I just didn't put it out. I never got to it.